Afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming. So today we'll continue our investigation of point of view and philosophy. And we're going to talk about another really powerful philosophical concept, which is action versus non-action. Action versus non-action. This concept is the entire third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It's the main principle in the Dao De Jing. It's addressed in the Spanda Karika and in the Yoga Sutras. So clearly, different people writing these books telling us how to practice all thought this was something to pay attention to. So we're going to do so as well. The concept is so central to the philosophies we're studying because really the mere contemplation of it brings the mind towards freedom. Not the understanding, but just simply contemplating it in every meaning of that word is useful. And I think as meditators, it makes so much sense. There's always this question sort of lingering, which is meditating doing something or doing nothing? And the answer lies in the orientation of our mind towards action. And the texts have different ways of explaining this. So we could rename this, another title to this idea would be taking action from the wrong perspective or taking action from misperception, be another way to think about that. So this concept of action, non-action is all about our orientation while doing something. And that something is something we all must do, which is to take action. Humans act, we do things. So the texts aren't talking about that. But what the texts are talking about is action becoming non-action when we're properly oriented. A couple or a few quotes from the Tao. The master acts without doing anything. When her work is done, she forgets it. That is why it lasts forever. Practice non-doing and everything will fall into place. Act without doing, work without effort. The master never reaches for the great. Thus, she achieves greatness. She doesn't cling to her own comfort. Thus, problems are no problem for her. And do your work, then step back. The only path to serenity. I would emphasize only in that particular text. It's pretty clear. Do your work, then step back. The only path to serenity. So the Tao teaches us to step back and let things be as they are after we do our work. So whatever action we take, it recommends that we simply let things take their course and mentally we retreat from that action. And it asks us not to worry about our comfort level with the results of our actions. Point here is that it's teaching us how to be one with nature and achieve the serenity of consciousness itself. Tao is asking us to be at one with nature. And, you might notice when you observe nature that that's how it works. We don't imagine a shark swimming around the ocean, eating fish, and then swimming 100 miles away and hunting a seal. And then I don't know what sharks do. I guess they keep swimming because they're always swimming. We don't imagine them as not sort of part of the natural cycle of things or stressing out, right, by these acts. It's just sort of doing its thing. And that's what the Tao is getting at. We should be one with that kind of flow of nature. And then we have the Gita, and these quotes are being told to Arjuna by Krishna. Krishna's God, and Arjuna's upset because he's having to fight a war and all that entails. And he's really trying to figure out, well, at first he's trying to get out of action, and then he's trying to figure out what he should do. And there's a section in that third section, which is all about non-action, and it goes like this. Performing actions for my sake, desireless, absorbed in the self, indifferent to I and mine. Let go of your grief and fight. Men who constantly practice this teaching are freed from the bondage of actions. Perform all actions for my sake, absorbed in the self. The self is the bigger self, not the ego small self, but the nature God self. Indifferent to I and mine. Oh, here you go. Let go of your grief and fight. Do the action. And if you practice this teaching, you're free from the bondage of that action. So the Gita asks us to perform actions for God's sake and not the ego's. And in this way, we're freed from the suffering that comes from taking action from an ego-centered place. The Yoga Sutras. To the discriminating person, all actions result only in pain, as a subliminal impression. Pain can also arise as a conflict between thoughts' vacillations and the natural forces of desire. So the Yoga Sutras tells us that all actions result in pain from what in this translation is called subliminal impressions on the mind. Another word for that would be samskaras. Actions create memories and impressions on the mind, and that causes pain. And especially when those actions are driven by desires that are in conflict with nature. Especially when those actions are driven by desires that are in conflict with the natural flow of things. Or another way to say that would be the Tao, if you were reading the Dao De Jing. And the sutras advises us to see the difference between the flow of nature and our ego-based selves. And it says this in 217, the cause of this avoidable pain is the illusory union of the seer with the seen, so that one does not possess discriminative knowledge of the true self. So this is the dualistic point of view. We must see the difference and discriminate between the bigger spiritual perspective, in this sutras, the seer, and the smaller ego-driven perspective, the seen. We then take all of our actions for the greater spiritual self and let go of thinking that we can control the results of the actions. And that would be the Yoga Sutras definition of non-action. We let go of, again, this like ego, self-centered thinking, and we discriminate between the big or like the real consciousness or spiritual underpinnings of the universe versus just what we think. And just by discriminating this way, our actions become non-action and we don't cause any pain or suffering in ourselves. As you can see, it's not a tongue twister, it's a mind twister, right? This concept is a mind twister, and it's purposely that way in all the texts, I believe, because it's trying to get us to really drill down and think about it so that our perspective gets adjusted on a regular basis. And when we do that, we move closer to serenity. So the Spanda Karika puts it like this. Actor and action are united. They're united. They're intertwined. But when action is dissolved by abandoning the fruits of the act, the very dynamic that is tied to the ego exhausts itself. And the Tantrika, who is absorbed in this profound contemplation, discovers the divine tremor liberated from its ties to the ego. The profound nature of action is revealed, and he who has interiorized the movement of desire no longer knows dissolution. He cannot cease to exist because he has returned to the profound source. That is a very big one. The Spanda Karika kind of gives us this big teaching in those few lines. But in its most basic form, the Spanda Karika asks us to throw ourselves deeply into the experience of the action we're taking. So much so, we forget the results of the experience. We forget about the results of the experience. And then we experience the source from where the action came from. So we throw ourselves into the action. We forget about the fruits of the act or why we did it in the first place. We're so deep in process with it that we have an experience. And that experience is at the very root of the reason why we took the action in the first place. So that experience is the root of all desire, which we're going to talk about in a future lesson. And the root of all desire is simply to feel consciousness or to feel the movement of the universe or to be one with nature. That is what we all desire. So the way we get here, says the Spanda Karika, is to throw ourselves into the action. And, in regular speech, not worry about the results because we can't control them anyway. Simply have the experience fully and don't pull ourselves out of the experience by thinking about the results of the action. So the common theme in all the teachings is that without perspective, we take actions and try to obtain results. And our ego believes that it controls how things turn out. And that is not a way to realize contentment, serenity, the sacred tremor, liberation from suffering, expanded consciousness, unity with God and nature, or whatever else we might perceive our goal to be. When we're working with meditation clients, we'll often see them striving, working on their practice. And these teachings of non-action remind us that we must be engaged in the great contemplation of abandoning the results of our actions if we want to find ourselves. So I'm encouraging us all to contemplate these teachings always while engaging in our meditation practice and when working with others. And in this way, we, say the texts, have the possibility of finding the peace and joy that is our birthright. We will chew on that for a moment. I want to thank you for your attention. We are all moving towards that peace that the texts promise us, but we have to be oriented in such a way that it is possible. And that's what this concept is about. So may we all find that peace. Om Shanti.